All right, once again, I'm Rich Delicio. I work for Ohio University. I work for the PTAC program, Procurement Technical Assistance Center. What we do is we help companies learn, bid, and find contract opportunities. A lot of my clients are here today, and I appreciate the support. And the panel is made up of clients. One of my clients that was going to be on the panel, Ronda Gooden from Clinical Research Management, called off today sick, so we're going to honor that. And I have her slides. We'll go through that a little bit. But I think the main thing here is we really want you to interact, ask questions. We're going to try to go through this as simple as possible. It's a very complex subject. When you're dealing with government contracting, it's very formal, and there's a lot of rules and regulations, and we just want to give you some helpful hints to get you started and some key elements to look for. So I'll go first, and then we'll have Todd, and then I'll go pretend I'm Ronda, and then we'll go to Travis. So that's the game plan. So here we go. So how to prepare a federal proposal. I guess is the mic on? I don't know. I guess I'm okay. All right. Okay. Oh, one too far.
What's that space age stuff?
So each proposal is going to be unique in itself. I mean, just like anything else, there's templates being utilized where federal agencies are going to use a framework. Buyers, point of contacts, whoever it may be, are going to use the same thing all the times. But every solicitation is going to be unique. They should update it, at least with dates and different things, but really have to take that into consideration. Make sure that when you're going into the process, each of them are a standalone event. The content, the format, how complex it is very important. You want to look at the requirements before you dive into it. And you really want to make sure that you're capable from a capacity standpoint, from a competitive nature, before you get too much involved in it. When we're talking about federal proposals, we're probably talking anywhere from 25 to 75 pages on a lot of them, maybe more depending on the elements, IT especially. So you really want to be concerned before you start looking into it how many hours that you're going to spend on it that is something that is going to be worthwhile for you. And what we really emphasize is also, and the other two gentlemen will get into it more, is really get involved in the process before the document goes out. I think that's one of the key elements. You want to have a good understanding. You want to have influence if possible, and that goes for any level as far as state, federal, or local. So we're looking at the size and the dollar value. We're looking at the evaluation as far as the criteria, what they're going to use to base the award. You want to make sure you understand that, and you could match the value. And what I mean by matching the value, it's not always low price. So if past performance is something that's very important, you better have past performance references that match what they're looking for. And the one thing about federal procurement, any type of public procurement, they can be a little bit more selective, and they really want it to be a glove fit. So I think that's important to understand that. The type of resulting contract, also very important. It could be a blanket order so that it's not going to be, it could be a blanket order that they say it's going to be worth $100,000. It doesn't mean that it'll go up to $100,000. Okay. And indefinite quantity, there's all type of things that the government does to meet their goals and their needs. And I think you have to understand that going in, and the solicitation has to identify what exactly they're looking for. You're not going to be a proposal expert after this, but again, we want to give you some insight and some understanding of what we think is important for the process. If you're writing a proposal on your own, learn as much from other people as much as possible. Ask the right questions. Have different eyes look at it. I think that's very important. With the program I'm at now, with the PTAC program, we have to write a grant request every 2 years. And the first time I wrote it, I got the grant proposal from the person that was there before me, and I updated it. So I followed that format, that pattern, making sure that it matched the same questions. I had to tweak it a little bit. But again, if you have a template or if you have someone that can help you with that, it's a good starting point. We do that with PTAC from the standpoint of what we have in our resources and what we do as much as possible. We can't fill it out for you, but we do review them, especially a draft form, and then we go from there. Prior to doing PTAC, I worked for a university. I was in charge of purchasing, and so a lot of proposals, all the proposals had to go through me to get out on the street. So the different templates, different understandings, and how to set them up is my background. And then through the PTAC in Ohio, we have a lot of retired veterans that have federal buying experience, which is a great resource also. So if there's something I don't understand or I need help on, I go to my cohorts in a minute. So again, if you're doing it for the first time, get a couple of eyes look at it. If you have a team in place, that's the best thing to have ready to go. But you really want to be able to look at it and get different objective opinions. We're going to talk a little bit about FedBiz Ops. That's where all the federal proposals are out. Anything over $25,000 has to be posted there by a federal agency. Also, you want to look for special notices, sources sought, because a lot of times that is the preliminary market research before there is a solicitation. So if there is going to be a sources sought for a woman-owned business and a certain NAICS code, you definitely want, and you do match up, you definitely want to be registered on that, and you want to make sure that they are aware of you. Whether or not they even take that proposal to the street, you want to start building that relationship from the beginning. One of my clients last summer, she was new to federal procurement. They pulled the bid off the street, and what she did was she contacted the contracting officer. She was able to get a small dollar order because they had to spend the grant money, and that was a start with her as far as doing business with National Health Institute of National Health. And again, small contract, but it's a good past performance. That was her first federal contract, and she's gotten a couple other contracts with the National Health because of that, okay? Because she has that past performance. So again, when you go into solicitation, a lot of times, don't just go in there with the idea that you're going to be bidding on it. You may want to be a subcontractor, or you may just contact and try to build a relationship for, again, a small dollar contract or anything down the road. Small business set aside, a lot of times there's criteria. Under 110,000, it's required by a federal agency to keep it as a small business. But there's also small business set asides for hub zone, women-owned, service-disabled veteran, all small business. And I forgot one, 8A. 8A is a minority firm with a 9-year contract, emerging contract. That certification is approved. The 8A and the hub zone is approved by the SBA. And we can help you with that application process. But again, those are some of the small business goals at the federal level. The state of Ohio has small business goals from the standpoint of they have Buy Ohio, and they have MBE and EDGE, minority business, and EDGE is women-owned business, and the minority businesses also. And again, those goals are measured and utilized at every level, state and federal level. So be aware of that. The classification, NAICS code, again, these are a lot of things that if you're new to PTAC, we help you get an understanding where you match up. But that classification, you have to be in the classification, the commodity that the proposal is being sent out on. And if you're not registered in SAM, you have to do that, Systems Award Management. When you do that, you also want to make sure you have the NAICS code that matches up. And again, you can go in there prior to submitting your bid and add the code. It's not that tough to do. But it's also, I think, understanding that when you start looking at proposals and bids, you're developing your own niche, what categories you're going to go into. And again, you want to make sure you have the references because they're going to want someone that has the past performance. The thing you want to be also is FedBiz Ops, proposal due date, and the archive date. The archive date is the date they will announce the award winner. They usually list that on the FedBiz Ops page where you see the solicitation. The three main parts, and really the main thing that I want to talk about when you're looking at federal proposals, Section C, L, and M. C will tell you the performance work statement, what exactly the government's looking for. Section L describes the content, how it should be formatted, when it's due, where it's delivered, how many copies. Everything you need to know about the proposal will be in Section L. And Section M is the evaluation criteria, what they're looking for, and what they're going to use to select the proposal. So you really need to look at those three areas first, and then if it seems like something you can go ahead and submit a proposal on, or get your team to submit a proposal on, then that would be, I would recommend those are the first three you look at. And again, it's a proposal, it's a process. You want to, especially the first couple times you do it, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to hopefully have a team, and when I say team, it could be 3 or 4 companies going at it together. Larger companies that have a big advantage, they have, and Ronda, who's not here today, she's the proposal manager for clinical research management. They have a 9-member team that just responds to proposals. It's a big advantage, okay? So if you're a small company, you really have to, when you see something coming, you really want to look at forecasting and get as much of a team together before the proposal actually comes out. A lot of times they'll have a notice to bidders as far as a pre-bid meeting. In construction, they call it pre-bid meeting. Federal government calls it industry days. So the industry day is going to be maybe 30 to 60 days prior to the bid due date, and they're there to answer questions. You cannot go in there looking for teammates. You really have to have your team going in there, partners, prior to that industry day. And I think it's important to understand that, especially when you get into contracts and bid proposals that are over $2 to $3 million. So it's, again, important to understand what exactly the capacity is as far as you're able to do as a company, and whether or not you need to put together a team. The conventional approach to write and review your proposal is allowing time for corrections, allowing other people to look at it. And we talk a little bit about that. We break it down to 3 sets of reviews: green, red, and gold. So the green is going to be what exactly are your main, what are your strengths? You want to make sure you identify them. So that's going to be probably what you do first. The red level, review after proposal draft is completed. So you can go back a second time and look at the ones that you don't feel as strong about. And then the gold level is, again, you're going to have hopefully 3 different sets of eyes looking at each of these. And you want to make sure that you're not misspelling any words, that the grammar is correct. Every little thing is going to be put together correctly. A lot of times also you have to label, as far as you may put them in a binder or something that's easy for a person to review. So that's something, again, you want to make sure you have. If you're putting it together, you want someone else to review it with you to make sure it matches up if you have 9 or 10 sections, whatever it may be. And again, you're going to have multiple writers sometimes, maybe just 2 or 3. Have someone look at it and overview the whole program, the whole proposal. What we recommend also, if you're doing, again, this is a process step by step. Create a file for each of the solicitations that you're going to write a proposal for. That proposal might come up again in 3 years, so you're ready for it. Especially if you're looking at a lot of local proposals, if you're looking at proposals at Kent State University or Akron University, and you're a janitorial company, and every 3 to 5 years it's going to be sent out, you want to have a file, and you want to have, you want to have exactly what you put together on that, and you can use that framework for some of the other type of collegiate type of proposals if you're going to answer those. So you create a written copy that you can use more than once. You want it also so that you have different writers looking at it and submitting their critique to it, their evaluation, comments. And you want to put it in a calendar, Excel spreadsheet, whatever works best for you, so that you have a timeline of what exactly you're going to put the proposal together, and being very aware of the due date. What we tell companies to do also is shred the RFP, identify everything in the proposal, and that could be as simply as taking the criteria or the questions in the proposal and putting them on an Excel spreadsheet and answering each question. They may be looking for references. They may be looking for, if you did business with Kent State in the past, other universities, key personnel. All those things are going to have to be put in there, and you want to make sure you match up to every question. And again, if you go in there and there's 13 or 14 criteria, and you know, just by accident you miss one or two, that could cause you to be eliminated from the proposal. It's important, again, to understand what exactly is going to be required, and shredding that section L, what the offer is. You want to make sure that you don't leave anything, again, blank left behind. Past performance, again, that's when federal procurement references. Who have you worked for? How do you match up to the solicitation? Did you deliver it? Did you meet the budget? And it's important to build a repository of past performance so that if you have worked for Homeland Security, or if you did work for the city of Akron, whatever it may be, that's past performance, and you want to utilize that in the appropriate bidding proposal. When they evaluate past performance, they want recency and relevancy. They don't want something that was done 20 years ago. If you did work for the government 20 years ago, that's great, but it's a different world right now. So they really don't want to know that. They want to know what you've done the past 2 years. And if you don't have government procurement, that's really not the major focus. If they want someone that has done grant writing, you've done grant writing for a nonprofit, they'll like that because you won something, okay? So again, past performance, references, you will put that in your proposal. There may be a proposal where you're required to submit a capability statement, which is the company resume. One of the key elements of the capability statement is past performance. And if they're doing a request for information, sources sought, or industry day, they may require you to send a capability statement to see whether or not you qualify to be invited. And again, a capability statement is something that the PTAC counselors assist. We have a format that we show you and that we help you with. So in the past performance, number one, specific agency. The second best would be from another federal agency. So if it's not Homeland Security, Department of Army, whatever it may be, Defense, state government, other government, and then commercial. CO, contracting officer, after the solicitation is released, you know, it again depends on the contracting officer. A lot of times they will not talk to you. If there's an email question, they're going to want it to be in writing, and they'll respond to everyone that has expressed interest in the solicitation. Again, if they think it should be answered. And that will be done in the form of an addendum that is sent out to all the interested parties. So especially on FedBiz Ops, if you're interested in the proposal and you're going to submit a response to it, make sure you express yourself as an interested vendor and that you're on listed as one of the people getting the addendums. If you miss the addendum, that's your fault. They care less if you were not registered or if you didn't get all the information. And sometimes it's as simple as they're extending the date. So you want to make sure that you do that. The government doesn't have to answer their questions. Again, it may be something they think you should know, that you should be an expert in the field. So they may just not even answer the questions. And also from the standpoint of a lot more of the acquisition staff has been reduced. So there may be just an electronic submittal, and they're not going to respond to anything. So you have to get that information as much as possible. And if you know something's coming out, try to talk to someone from the small business liaison or someone to get that information in advance. And you want to have influence if possible. If you're if you sell furniture, you want them to use one of your brands. If you're a roofer, you want them to consider the type of roofing that you provide that you have easy access to, or ceiling tiles, whatever it may be. You want to make sure your product is going to be acceptable. And you want to get the architect who's ever involved in designing the, whether it's construction or if it's interior design, whatever it may be, or software for a IT program. You want to have as much influence as possible that they consider what you have and what you can provide. And again, that could be sometimes provided at a vendor's day, industry day, sources sought, anything you can get as far as contact prior to the submittal of the proposal. All questions and answers, again, will be shared with the bidders. We talked about that as far as addendums. And again, you want to be careful on what information that you give your competitors. If you're the incumbent and you have a nice relationship with the federal agency or the state agency, they're going to give as little information as possible because they don't want the other competitors to know what exactly they're having success with. I mean, I'm not making that's just, it's a simple thing you should understand and go in there with that understanding. So you want to make sure that you get as much information as possible. You're not always going to get it from the last proposal reading, but you may be able to get it from asking questions from people that are involved in the process. Again, janitorial, try to get some information from the night supervisor, not necessarily the person in charge of the department. Try to see some of the evaluations. If they have evaluations, ask them to see if you can see the format or some of their concerns. And then try to pick up as much information as possible. So you have to kind of use a strategy to go in there. And again, the more you can do that in advance, you'll have a better time being prepared for when the proposal is going to be submitted. So again, the technical volume, and we're going back to some of the key sections. Section 11 will specify the content, the format, and length. You're going to provide an introduction on yourself. You're going to provide some of the key data, DUNS, cage code number, NAICS code, etc. Who's going to be your point of contact? Your response to the technical volume, whether, again, IT, not just the price structure, how you're going to have a cost reduction program over the 5-year period, whatever it may be, what new products you have to offer, whatever it may be, something like that is going to something that is your niche and that will separate you a little bit more. You're going to use the Section C as far as the work statement, generating what you're going to perform. And the outline of the bid will also tell you, they're going to tell you how many pages they want each section, or what they'll take submittals up to 50 pages. And if you turn in over 50, it could be the best part of your proposal. They'll just throw it away. They won't even count it. So you have to be concerned with all that from the standpoint of being prepared to respond to it, whether or not you have the capacity, whether or not you have enough time to put the team together. And again, this is I kind of went through this quickly because I really want you to have a basic understanding before the two gentlemen talk. But federal proposals, the first time you do it, it's going to take you a long time. After you do 3 or 4, you'll be able to reduce the time in half. Guarantee it. Or you won't look at it because you know what you went through the first time. So you have to be conscious of that. And again, part of what we're looking at today is mainly looking at the federal proposal, but we talk a little bit about the state and the local, because you may find the federal not a good match for you, especially as a small company. And there's other ways to look at it too, as far as what GSA schedule, or developing a joint venture with 2 companies or whatever it may be. And we're seeing more and more of that, and you're seeing the federal government encouraging that, because they want companies to be an expert. They don't want companies to say, yeah, I could do that, I could do that. No, they want you to be very good at it, and they want something that is going to provide cost savings over the life of the contract. They're relying on companies to provide research and development more and more, whether it's a prime company or a small company. And they're also looking for companies to lead them, whether it's IT or any type of cost savings. It's very important to them. It makes them look good, and it also is keeping them in touch with the marketplace, so to speak. So in summary, proposals are a process. The more you work on them, you'll get better at them. You know, you want to make sure that it's compliant, so Section L is the key there. Start building your past performance repository, your references. Consider being a subcontractor so you're not the lead, so you can learn the ropes. And I think the other part of that is also, while you're doing all of this, while you're looking at proposals, you should be building your resources from the standpoint of the contracting officers, the buying officers, and also people in your field that have had federal proposal response experience, or they're looking to go into the market with you. And you can do it as a team. And, you know, I had two of my clients recently bid on state work. They've known each other 6 months, and they this past month they won 2 contracts. And again, it's IT. They both have the experiences, different experiences, and they put their 2 heads together, and they did a nice job. So it's important to understand that it's doable, and there's different approaches. But again, when you're looking at federal proposals, just think of the time commitment, and whether or not you're a good fit. Now I'm going to turn it over to Todd from Kent Displays.
Thank you very much, Rich. And thank you, all of you, for braving the beautiful Northeast Ohio weather to join us this evening. And I wanted to just start off to get a better sense of the audience. By show of hands, how many of you have worked on at least one federal proposal? Okay, great. And then in terms of folks also, by show of hands, how many of you have worked on at least one other kind of proposal, say for state level or local, that kind of thing? Excellent. So what I'll be talking a little bit about is a broader idea of how to prepare for the wonderful world of writing proposals, particularly for government and federal government. And the idea that I think is very vital is how critical it is to have a proposal team in place. And I'm going to take a kind of a broad approach to what a proposal team actually involves, because it can involve folks from your company, colleagues of yours, people in this room, resources like Rich and the PTAC, and your own network of experts. So next slide, please. So just a little bit about what I'll be going through today is just kind of an introduction about myself and what the company I work for, Kent Displays, does. I want to present a model that I think is helpful as you're considering building a team based on the idea of trust. How you manage to win. So the idea of, as Rich said, this is not an easy process to go into proposal. So you want to have a commitment that you're going to win something as a result. The idea of how you have an E in team, and I have a couple of additional resources that that I've found helpful in doing this kind of work. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about Kent Displays. Out of curiosity, any folks in the audience familiar with boogie boards? Excellent. So Boogie Board Products, the liquid crystal display, is manufactured just down the street in Kent, Ohio. Our company has been around since 1993. We developed out of technology from Kent State University's Liquid Crystal Institute. And the goal of it is to use these kind of displays, which is a unique kind of liquid crystal display that is plastic, so it can be manufactured on roll-to-roll manufacturing, and it uses reflected light, so it doesn't have to be backlit, so it can be very thin. And our goal is to replace paper. We feel we have a very strong writing experience. The company has been around since 1993, but only started selling these consumer products about 4 years ago. So I came on board about a year ago, and part of my role, my formal title is intellectual property manager. And what that entails is I work with the scientists on writing up the patents and other intellectual property, but I also help identify funding for the company through federal, state, and other opportunities. And then I also help manage the software testing for the software that's related to our latest product. Next slide. So just a little bit, our company now has about 105 employees around the world. Our headquarters in manufacturing, research, and development are here in Kent, and we have sales folks in Southeast Asia and Europe, other places. And we do a lot of collaborations with universities, with larger companies, with smaller businesses, that type of thing. Because part of the idea of doing this work is, as a small business, you can often feel very alone, but it's critical to understand that you're part of, to build this team that you need to work together with others. Next, please. So we do both consumer products as well as we have the displays go into other kinds of things for OEM. And I bring this up because on the consumer side, we're not dealing with proposals per se. That's sort of our sales folks trying to get shelf space in retailers like Bed Bath & Beyond and Costco and so forth. But on the OEM side, that can involve proposal efforts as you're trying, nowadays it's not only government, but a lot of larger companies want proposals from small businesses as well. But a lot of the proposal work we do is to get funding for the research and development, that's the science that goes into these displays. So why would you ever want to do a federal proposal? I mean, it's a lot of work, it's time consuming, it may take a long time before you hear a response. It's not necessarily fun, but it can actually help your business in a lot of ways. But there's some questions that I'd offer for you to consider as you're evaluating federal proposals. First off, you have experience that meets a federal need. You have support, or you need support for research and development for unique things that you do as a company. Now, research and development isn't just high-tech information technology. You can have a company that does asphalt, develops asphalt and so forth, and there are certain types of research you want to get funded for to improve your products. You may have a company that does other kind of manufacturing or services that getting research funding can help you develop what you want to sell. You're ready to meet the requirements, and this means assume you're going to win. Take seriously what the federal government wants. Assume you're going to win. Do you have the capacity to do that? Take that seriously. That means you have the marketing ability to talk to people who are involved in the decision making. You can actually draft a response. Like Rich says, these can be 75 pages with a lot of information. You're able to keep the lights on while you're doing this proposal effort because you need to have cash flow going while you do the proposals and while you wait for the response, and that you're able to deliver. At the end of the day, if you win the contract, that's fantastic, but if you fail to deliver, that can be even worse than not having done this effort at all. Because you can wait and wait and wait a long time to hear an answer. And then you want to have access to a responsive, quality, and winning team. You want to be surrounded by people that know what they're getting into, but are committed to helping you win this work. And you can lose, you can learn from losing, and you can willing to try again. There are many times I've talked to people who've tried things, and they say, oh yeah, I did try a federal proposal once, but it didn't work out, so I dropped that. And I hear that, and I think, really? You're not, all that work you've done, you're just going to walk away from an entire vast potential for your company because you lost once. And I think it's an important decision for any entrepreneur to make, but just recognize that you're likely to lose more often than you win in this federal proposal, but if you can learn from your efforts, you can be better and develop more opportunities to win. And it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you learn to win well often. So I want to keep that approach. So when I talk about winning, it's not just you win the bid and you get funding from it, but you actually learn from the experience and get valuable resources for your company. Next slide. So this trust model that I want to present to you includes the team, who's responsible and what relationship you have with the decision makers, the usefulness of what you have to offer, subject matter experts or SMEs, the people who actually know this may be you or it may be someone in your company who's the technical expert that's going to have to respond to what the government really, really wants. They'll outline specifications, and you need to have someone on board, if that's not you, who can actually answer intelligently what the government wants and work with you to create a way that you can win. And then finally, time. It takes a lot of time to do this, and your awareness of time is critical. Next, please. So your team is both your internal team in your company, which means who sells, who's going to write this, and who's going to manage this process. And by manage it means make sure it gets delivered on time. And then externally, who's available to work with you at the time you need that help, who's unique enough to build in a team that you make a very strong case to the government, and finally, who's really going to work with you. I mean, that can be very different than who you think is the best fit, because you really want to work with someone you trust is going to be dependable and is going to deliver. And a proposal process is a great trial run. You can identify partners and ask them to get you information, and you can kind of use that as a means to, like, how responsive are my partners? If they can't even get to me 2 pages for a proposal, do I really want to work with them and have to depend on them as a supplier? So that proposal efforts are great trial runs for business relationships. Next, please. So you want to be responsible too. So winning response requires responsible team members. Somebody has to lead this team, but everyone must deliver. You're going to have deadlines, you're going to have things that have to come into play. And again, if your colleagues and teammates can't even deliver a couple pages or some budget information you need, do you really want them on your team when you need materials or supplies or services that they're going to offer? And key is how you want to take, give, and track these responsibilities, because to get all the pieces in place can be pretty complicated. So just to give you a highlight, since all of you have such great organizations and small businesses with enough resources to accomplish everything you need, these are some typical roles that takes for big companies. So I'm talking about major companies like Northrop Grumman and Boeing and the huge government contractors. These are all the kinds of people that are involved in doing their federal proposals. You may not have all these people on your staff today, so someone is going to have to take these kinds of roles. And you'll hear a little bit in Rhonda's presentation. She talks about capture management. And capture management in the broadest sense is a combination of sales and marketing and project management, which is how you capture business. And that's a combination of how you write proposals, but how you build relationships with the decision makers. Of all these different roles here, capture management is critical. So if you're going to be in the business of federal proposal development, you want to make sure that you have solid capture management, which is how you identify responsibilities, how you start and build conversations with people, and how you capture business, whether it's as a subcontractor or a direct contract. And this is a huge part of the effort. Proposals are one part of that. And as you can see, all these folks come into play. And of all the other ones, I would want to mention it's very helpful to have graphic artists or someone who can do pictures really well. Because for a moment, I know this may be a challenge for small business owners and a lot of people nowadays, but if you put yourself on the other side of the table, what actually happens in a windowless room in Washington, D.C. or Arlington, Virginia, or wherever the decision makers are that are sitting and evaluating proposals. Now, on the other side of this, people who do this aren't necessarily full-time evaluators for the government. They're people who have other government responsibilities who've been I think diplomatically invited to a room to sit down and review maybe 5 or 50 responses. They usually, the amount of time they get to review them doesn't change. And they have a stack of these, and they have a checklist. And they go through them, and they say, you know, okay, did this proposal meet all these things? Your job in the proposal process is to present your company well, to demonstrate a solution, and to make life easy for the people evaluating it. That seems like an odd thing in the sense of what you want to do as a business, but from a sales point of view, that makes perfect sense. You want to close your deal as easily as possible. In the proposal world, that means you want to help your evaluators evaluate. And nothing like a picture that very clearly and succinctly demonstrates how your solution works and how it's different, professionally done, can be very powerful. By the way, when the proposals say 1-inch margins, 12-point, Times New Roman font, make sure your proposals are 1-inch margin, 12. Because in that stack of 50, any evaluator would want to go through and figure out, how do I get rid of as many proposals as I can? And if they want to narrow it down, then they break out the rulers and they look at, okay, 51 pages, not compliant. 0.75-inch margins, not compliant. Because their job is to get through as many of these as they can in a short amount of time. Next slide, please. So, for the millionth time, if you haven't heard it before, do not wait until you see the RFP released. Now, you might say, well, that's the only way I know about this stuff. And in many ways, that's how you first can learn about these things. But Rich can share with you a lot of different ways. He mentioned there are what are called requests for information, which is the government kind of saying, hey, industry, we think we want this, but what do you have to say? If you have relationships with the decision makers on the government side, they can kind of prompt you like this is coming out. There are what are called broad agency announcements, where federal agencies will say, these are the kinds of things we're interested in looking at. Talk to us, please. By the time an RFP is released, and RFPs will often be released in draft format. So the government will release a draft and say, industry, what do you think? At that point is when, if you're very interested in this opportunity, you start your work. Because when the draft comes out, that gives you a chance to understand what they're looking for. If you see an RFP you haven't seen before, make note of it. If it's something you really want to do, figure out who is already working on that to partner with, or wait till the next time. So it doesn't mean people don't apply to RFPs that come out and win, but it just is a lot more work. You want to use your experience to build relationships. You want to connect the dots. You have to tell the government, because the government doesn't know your business as well as you do. You need to help someone connect the dots about what's unique about what you do to what their need is. And you want to build this relationship over time. And keep in mind, no can often mean not right now. It doesn't mean it will never work. Because on the government side, there are a lot of things that come into play that stop their ability to work with companies. You're qualified, but the customer can't use you then because their budget has been cut, because Congress hasn't decided that they have a budget this year, because the requirements have changed since they issued the RFP, a whole host of reasons. But if you present yourself well, the agency can keep that in mind. And you want to build up your experience. So if you want to start in a local public sector, a single school, a local non-government agency, if you want to subcontract at any level you can to work on a project. And finally, if you want to partner on projects with key primes, major companies that you know are working in government, but on a project that isn't government, anything you can do to build your experience, even the smallest amount of time, if you can start getting the experience of what it takes to document what you do, any way to do it. But above and beyond all this, you must do all your work well. You're in business because you love what you do, and you have the integrity to do this well. But I really encourage you to make sure that you excel above and beyond expectations on any work you would do under contract, because you want to build this customer past performance. You want to really show that you can excel at what you do. And contract work is a key place to do that. Next slide. You want to be honest when you think about usefulness. Can you really do what they want and do it well? So yes, you're excellent janitorial service. You've done 5 buildings really well. Do you really want to take on doing an entire Army base with 300 buildings potentially? Maybe you have a role to play on a team that can do that, but really be honest about your capabilities as you evaluate opportunities. Because you want to know who you can call for help. And that means literally who is in your, in your contact list that you could pick up and say, hey, can you help me figure out a way to solve this problem? That network of trusting partners that you've developed over time are going to be critical in evaluating these contract opportunities. And then, your friendly neighborhood PTAC. Rich is always available for helping you if you take this seriously to get into it. And please, your tax dollars at work. PTAC program, small business development centers are services that you can take advantage of to help in this effort. And your internal team. So keep in mind, if you do this, this is going to be done on company time plus, potentially. Plenty of opportunities that I've been involved with that have had with teams that have been working through weekends sometimes to get things done on time. But basically, if you have an internal team that's going to be involved with this, they're going to need time and probably overtime. They're going to take company resources, meaning they'll be doing a lot of printing potentially. They're going to need your input if you're the owner of the company and your encouragement, that this is really important. And finally, they're going to take up more than you might expect because there's a lot of details in some of these proposals. But there's also pleasant surprises. You have employees that can rise to the occasion that don't necessarily have roles that you would expect. There's been many times when I've had administrative support personnel be my extra set of eyes after like 3 or 4 late nights when it's all starting to blur. And it's amazing how much critical information they can catch. And it's to know that that can be as much a part of the trusted team is vital. I've had to befriend sometimes internal IT folks to make sure that, this happened in a recent one, that I could very rapidly download the secure zip file software program that this particular agency required that we encrypt our files for to submit for a proposal. To be able to do that quickly meant having teammates that would rise up and say, okay, yeah, let's make this happen. New talents are revealed. You may discover that you actually do have a really great graphic artist or a proofreader or copywriter in your midst. And then finally, everyone learns from this process. Next slide, please. So you're subject matter experts. So what is the subject that you want to address? Why does it matter, and who is the expert? Every one of the proposals that you'll face will require very specific expertise that you have to present. You may or may not know all the components of this, but you need to know people who can speak intelligently to them. And ideally, they're the ones who can also write intelligently to them, but that's not necessarily the case. So you're going to need to be able to talk to them, and either you or someone translate what they're saying into compelling and clear information. You want to leverage four-letter T's. You want to leverage technology, time management, trust building, and sheer tenacity. If you're in business today, you know the last one pretty well, because it's hard to be in business without being tenacious. That's going to be multiplied as you seek federal funding and proposal work. So you want to gain trust with your subject matter experts because you want to have them around beyond any particular proposal effort. So you want to treat them with respect, even if they're experts talking language that you don't understand. And you want to, I call this acknowledgement, which is you want to understand that they do have knowledge in sometimes pretty esoteric areas, but it's important that you respect that and you understand their knowledge and use that for what you want to do. And you want to build trust with your team. That means set realistic expectations, reward folks, and feed them often. I mean, literally, Whenever you get a chance, if you're working on a proposal, get food for your team. It's a very low investment for a great return, I find. Next slide, please. And time. So your documents and your proposals have a time deadline. External deadlines and then your internal expectations to make sure this happens. And if you take nothing away from my presentation about federal proposals, then take away DBIDID. That's my mantra. What it stands for is day before it's due, it's delivered. So whenever you see a deadline in a federal proposal, you take the day before, or if it's Monday, the Friday before, and that is your day that you will deliver this proposal to that customer. Because inevitably, the worst snowstorm is going to occur so that your FedEx delivery is delayed, and you can watch the nice little tracking that UPS and FedEx provide that say weather delay. Because the government doesn't matter. It's their clock. They will have a clock sometimes in a room like that, and at 1 minute after, it's done. No do-overs, nothing like that. They will close the bids, and you can't turn it in. In the proposal world, there's a lot of war stories about like rushing in and getting it in 1 minute under and so forth, but trust me, save yourself the hassle, deliver it a day before it's due, and use that as a model for how you want to deliver your work, managing on time, under budget kind of thing. Doesn't always work, but I find it helpful for managing these projects. So your subject matter experts, if they're on your staff, they typically have 4 things that they're doing. They're billing, so especially your best subject matter experts are going to be billing in a consulting role, or they're going to be out delivering. They're not going to be available. They're going to be shilling or trying to sell your company's services. They're trying to fill in different needs and respond to customer needs, or they might be chilling, they might be taking a break. In some companies I worked with, the subject matter experts were being flown across the country, so to get them to talk to me was unbelievably difficult. Sometimes I had to get up at 5:30 in the morning to talk to them on the phone for a half hour or something like that to get enough of a data dump in terms of their information so I could write and get this done. So you want to catch me if you can. You want to find whatever way you can talk to these subject matter experts. So it can be, even when you're not in a proposal rush, if you can just talk to the experts and build your own knowledge so you can ask better questions in shorter amount of time. And you want your team time. Your team is going to take a lot of time on a particular effort, but you really don't want to burn them out on a single proposal effort, which can happen. They're really intense experiences sometimes, but you want to sustain your team through a particular proposal because you're going to use them for everything that you do. They may work on multiple proposals at the same time. It's really important to recognize that, and this is true for each and every one of you too, you need to take care of yourself because it can be a pretty grueling process and you still have to do your business the next day. Next slide, please. So you want to manage to win. And again, the main point I want to offer is that the notion of this isn't really about writing a proposal. Yes, technically that's part of it. Your goal is to win business. So you want to care for your team. You want to meet often. You want to understand what's on their plate. You want to find ways to celebrate throughout the process. And it does, as I mentioned, help to feed them. No single proposal effort is worth burning out your team. And you have to know when to stop sometimes. The best decisions of small business owners and managers is to say, enough. This isn't going to work. Let's walk away from this. There will be other opportunities. And you want to build your internal support. You want to build the infrastructure, get them the information they need, inspiration, help them manage it, and instigation is being a nag, keep them on task. And I actually did a presentation about these ideas at a conference, and be happy to provide you the link myself, or Rich can provide it as well. Next slide, please. And then there's an E in team as well. So you want to use technology to support your efforts, whether it's your own laptop or larger systems. You want to make sure your software is consistent with different people you're working with. You should back up, if you haven't heard this before, and back up again, and back up a third time, because nothing is more frustrating than the day before it's due, and your files are gone, or some computer system crash happens. And one real technical thing, but very important, is what's called version control. Especially if you're working with multiple people, you want to make sure you know what the latest version of your proposal is, because that's also frustrating when you print out to do the last review and you realize, wait, we took this out like 2 weeks ago. What's this doing here? It takes some practice, but it's important to do. And so you want to create a real space, like a conference room, to work well, but you also want to have a virtual space that you can dedicate to the proposal. And different tools help. If you work with folks in different locations, conference calls are really important, but there's an etiquette and a way to manage conference calls well. You want to be able to share documents for editing and review. And sometimes you can do that through tools like WebEx or SharePoint or other kinds of tools that are out there. There are graphics tools you can use to help. You want to keep track of a calendar and your tasks. And you want to have a repository of what I call artifacts. And that's sort of your boilerplate, the things you'll use and reuse. And then if you're really interested and you have a lot of extra revenue, there are actually advanced proposal development software tools you can get. Next slide, please. So, in conclusion, build your team well. Partners that you trust for the long term to help everyone win. You want to build your team in. You start with what you have today inside your company and see what your strengths are. You then supplement that with partners that will help. And you recognize the information, infrastructure, inspiration, instigation you have to offer. And then you want to build your team to advance. You want win or lose. A debrief is where you talk to the government after the whole experience has been done and say, what do you really think? The government may or may not respond, but they are obligated to give you some kind of feedback. So debriefs are really important. You learn from it, and you improve, or you just stop. You say, this isn't from myself or my company. You want to start earlier the next time, and then only do federal proposals if it helps you grow. If it helps you grow in terms of generating more revenue for your business, if it helps you grow in terms of collecting information on what you have to offer, if it helps you grow in terms of skill sets that you want to have. Otherwise, it really is not the best way to spend your time if you're not going to grow from it as a company. Next slide, please.
Is that it? Oop. Oh, Todd, wait a minute.
So I do have a couple resources. Again, I'd be happy to send these to you, or you can check with Rich. The APMP used to stand for the Association of Proposal Management Professionals. So this is an association of folks that spend their days writing proposals. And they have some resources available at their website that are helpful. There's a resource called captureplanning.com, which has a lot of neat articles and so forth if you're trying to just get some general ideas of what proposal development can entail. The SBIR and STTR programs, Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Research, are federal government. Several agencies fund these that are solely for small businesses to support research and development efforts. And they have information at sbir.gov in terms of those programs. And then the Association of PTACs also has some contracting tips and resources that I think are helpful. And do you want to do questions now or after?
You can ask questions now. Go ahead.
Okay, please. It's interesting. So there's no easy answer because different agencies can choose to respond different ways to those. And the challenge is that there's twofold. One is that depending on the agency, my understanding, and I'm not a legal expert, so I can't really speak to what opportunities there are with that. But in terms of my understanding of the times that I've been involved in efforts around that, one is that certain agencies, the people that are issuing the RFP are far away from the people that on the government side receive the request. So the requests often go to the agency, but not necessarily to the person who's responsible for that proposal. So it kind of has to trickle through the government to get the information back, which may not meet the time constraints you have for a particular proposal. There's no, as far as I know, there isn't any formal incentive that makes them have to do it before a deadline kind of thing. The other is that sometimes with certain confidential information, like particularly with Department of Defense or Homeland Security, I believe they can actually redact critical information about price solutions and other kinds of things that may prevent sort of the full information on that. But I think that the winning proposal can be helpful to understand the solutions, and to the extent you can get that, that is really helpful. And I found it can really vary widely. There have been some state agencies that have been, here's your CD with all the winning proposals. Keep in mind, if you're on the other side, that also means that your information is out there too. So it's a balance. So I don't have a very specific answer about how to do that well, other than if there is an effort that you think is going to be repeated, if you can file that Freedom of Information Act earlier, the earlier you can get that in for that kind of thing, the better. It's also probably good to talk to PTAC and other folks involved with it, because there may be, I think there's some debate about how government perceives that kind of thing too, which may be an aspect in terms of your relationship building. You know, if sometimes if government might see a lot of those coming through from a particular company or something like that, that may give a particular impression. I'm not sure, that may vary. Does that make sense?
Well, I think two things have changed, at least in my 5 years, is the number of protests is up dramatically, and that's it may be used as an excuse more than anything, but that's part of why they're not releasing the information. Even now on debriefing, they give you less than what they did. You know, they just used to maybe even call you with information or explain, you know, here's what you should do next time. Now, and it's maybe because they sense the high level of protest, they're only giving a certain amount of information because they think it's going to lead to more disclaimers and things that, oh, hey, you did this wrong, or this is what you're looking, you know, that type of feedback. They're not really. I'm not saying it's fair, but I think you're seeing more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it can be arbitrary, you know. And just to clarify from what Rich is saying, what a protest is that, so the government can finally issue the winner of a proposal, but other companies, if they choose, can protest that and basically stop the government from actually beginning that work until the protest runs its course. So what started to happen is that more and more companies started protesting. The government realized that was actually slowing down their ability to do things. So it's created this kind of culture to some extent that's resisting giving too much information out or some of the stuff. It is unfortunate. I think there are some efforts underway to help build a better relationship, but it can be arbitrary. And then keep in mind that day when the evaluators are reviewing your proposal, one evaluator may be reading it really closely. The other agency may have 30 or so they're just skimming through it. So even though it can be confusing. And that's why when you do win or you build a good relationship, sometimes you get more work within a particular agency than the same work across different agencies.
I'm going to go to the next set. This is Ronda's presentation about capture management, and Todd's our expert, so he's going to fill in. No, I'm just kidding. No, but Ronda works for Clinical Research Management. Real quick, they do a lot of research, infection disease, head collision, a lot of, mainly for the military. They have 35 employees in Hinckley, Ohio, and then they have probably close to another 300. A lot of those mad scientists type all over the country doing research for them. It's an amazing company that we have in Northeast Ohio. Ronda has been with them right after I started, so close to 5 years now. She's been the proposal manager. So her job is really to make sure that they're fit on what they're going after, and then they plug it into the little network they have. And this is her capture management as far as to bid or not to bid. I'll be glad to send any of this information on afterwards, including Todd's information, Travis's information, and Rhonda's. Just let me know. So capture management identifies the opportunities that will be pursued by the company. So it's an organization assessment on whether or not they're going to go after the, and again, it may be just like in construction, you have 40 workers and you have 3 jobs on site now. You're not going to be bidding. You're not going to go after a major contract that maybe you would consider if only 1/4 of your team was working. So a lot of it has to do with their scheduling and what's going on within what they have. The location is going to be on a lot of times also for a company of this size. So the capture management team will provide what exactly they're looking at, who the competition will be, and also who their partners are going to be. And again, they'll have that going in to make their case to management. So this is even before they even start looking at the proposal. PM's the project manager, so they're going to make all this information in preparing the proposal available. Some of their scheduling and where they're at as far as to go or no go. Some informal information, ideas from the proposal team, what they're looking at. Maybe they're not going to bid on something because they have something coming, forecasting the next month that is going to take more of a critical slant on what they're doing. So they plan things out a couple of months in advance, and whether or not what part of their team or what experts they have working on it. Defining the proposal strategy from the standpoint of, again, is it a 1-year contract, 3-year contract, 5-year contract? What are the resources it's going to take from them? Do they have the team in place? Or are they dealing with a team that they have to put together, dealing with partners for the first time? All of that comes into play into fact. So the goal is to confirm the strategy to make sure that it's a sound strategy from the standpoint of resources, cost, something they feel that they can meet, that it is a good fit for them. Whether it's a cost reduction or it's something that it could be something that they want to see through because maybe it's information they need for another project, or it's the first time. I know the first time they went to go do work for Wright Pat, it was really they wanted to go into doing work for the Air Force because up until that time they had no contract with the Air Force. So all of those are going to play into their decision-making process. So again, the goal is to confirm the strategy, be able to start writing before the RFP is even released. And so they're working, Ronda and her team is working on the industry days, on the relationships that they have when the expiring contracts are into effect. They look at all of that well in advance. This is their capture process. Number one, who the customer is going to be. Is it someone that they have done work for in the past? Is it a contracting officer that they've won in the past with? The intelligence gathering, again, putting everything that they need to have to write the proposal, so the assessment by the organization. What's their strategy going to be? What's the competitive analysis? Who are some of their competitors? Do they have a team? And solution development, do they have a sound strategy to go forward with it? and this is, no disclaimer here, this is me talking on Ronda's notes, so I don't want to get too far here. So again, the go, no-go team, and that's really the key, key thing of this is, the assessment, are we going forward or are we going to stop? And that's really what they're looking at. So they're going to arrange for the proposal team to get together with the CM team and make that decision. So they're going to have representatives from contracting to finance, subject matter experts, as Todd mentioned, and of course the executive manager, chief financial officer, and EVPs. So the CEO, Victoria Tift, who's she's going to be at this meeting when they present the idea of whether they're going to go forward or not. So again, it's very critical. And again, we're talking 35-member team, basic team, and they have 10, 12 people working on this project. And you can just imagine, you're dealing with, I didn't want to do that. You have your staff of 3 members, and you got to decide whether or not you're going to go forward on a proposal. Okay, I'm doing something wrong. Okay now, sorry. Oop. This is where I left off. I'm sorry, thanks. All right. So the factors they look at, how well does the project fit their growth strategy? What's their relationship with the client? Again, have they done work for Wright Pat? Have they done work for NASA Glenn, whatever it may be? Does their experience match the performance work statement, Section C? Do we have the staffing capabilities at this point in time? Or when the proposal is for work to start in February, where are we at in February? The competition. Is it going to be profitable? Is it worth us to get involved? Are we chasing pennies? Are we going to be able to deliver what they're looking for? And do we have enough, time to put the proposal together? It's going to take a lot of effort, 3 or 4 people writing, whatever it may be. Do we have enough time to do that based on our current needs and other projects? And I think those are a lot of the same comments that she had on the previous slide. Once the go decision is decided, the project manager will be identified. And this was real nice. She put this is the PTAC. We provide a bid matching service for our clients. So that's where they get a lot of their proposals that they're working on. We have, again, this is paid for by your tax dollars. So we have over 2,200 sites from across the country where we set up a bid match service based on keywords, NAICS codes, anything like that, so we can provide you information. We just started, in fact, I just started switching companies. We now are able to get special notices from FedBizOps. So those requests for information, industry days, we're just now able to provide those for our clients, which is a big advantage. So hopefully the technology from this Texas company will help us provide a lot of that information in advance that we're talking about today. And we can discuss this if you want to take a look at this later. I'll be glad to do that. This is, GovWin is something that they pay for in addition to our PTAC service. So they're looking at specific categories. I don't know if you can see that. Recent opportunities, new grant, recent grant opportunities, updated government profiles, any type of information they can use from companies in their marketplace, looking for partners and looking at their competition. We also, when I say we, PTAC has just purchased another software, and I think I've shared it with some of you. It's called FedMine, where it's provided information on federal procurement that also helps us identify contracting officers, first-time award winners, things like that, special information to help companies as they build their profile, their resources, and seek their opportunities. So in addition to the bid proposals, some of the winning information or information as far as forecasting. And then this is the basic FedBiz Ops page that we mentioned, which is a good starting point for all that information. Okay, now we're going to have Travis. Travis Crane, he's an engineering consultant for his company, him and his father's company. Your dad's still involved, right?
Yep.
Okay. I didn't want to leave him out. All right.
Good evening. Thanks for your time tonight. As Rich said, my name's Travis Crane. My company, I'm the managing partner of TGC Engineering. TGC, we're civil engineers and surveyors. We perform consultation services to our clients in the land development markets, environmental markets, and utilities, and also surveying. Prior to 13 years ago, prior to starting TGC Engineering, I worked for a highway contractor and did a lot of construction bidding actually in the field a lot for that company also. So I'm here to talk to you about construction estimating. Construction estimating is a very complex topic, or it can be very simple. I've been involved in spending 16 weeks of my life in a graduate level course on construction estimating. I've been involved in jobs that we've taken 3 months to bid a $90 million project, and on the flip side, I've given estimates to people on a napkin at Bob Evans at 7 a.m. on a Thursday morning too. So it's a tough subject to get your hands around. So instead of getting into the nitty-gritty on how to estimate, what I want to talk about is more philosophies in estimating, because I really think when it comes down to it, estimating is about risk management. But I do have to warn you, I am an engineer, so there's probably going to be an equation or two in one of these slides, so it's kind of part of my personality. I can't do something without an equation, so I apologize ahead of time. Next slide, please. So in my experience, really successful estimating is about good risk management. And when it comes down to risk management, what are we talking about? There's two components to successful businesses. It's protecting your downside and maximizing your upside. And I think the older I get, the more I realize it's more important to protect your downside than it is to maximize your upside. I think 22 years old, right out of college, it was working for a big highway contractor. It's about, hey, let's make money, let's be successful, let's maximize our upside. And then you start running a small business, and it's your money, and you realize you take a couple hits to the shorts and you lose money, and you go to work for free for a couple months. It's like, we should probably protect our downside. That's a little more important. As great as it feels to be successful profit-wise on a project, it hurts that much more to lose money on a project. And I always, when I think of estimating, there's that Woody Hayes quote when he talks about passing versus running. There's 3 things that can happen when you estimate, and 2 of them are bad. And you spend all that time and you don't get the project, which is bad. Even worse is you get the project and you lose your rear end on it, and you lose money, which is worse than not getting it. And the third thing is getting the project and being successful. So, you can bat 300 and be really successful, but there's a 2/3 chance you're gonna fail. Next slide, please. So really, what if I could convey anything, it's protecting the downside. And protecting the downside is really when you're estimating, and specifically on construction, it's figuring out where your risk is on a certain project. And here's the equation I promised. So it's really, when you look at total cost of something, really just spreadsheeting things out. It's total cost on a construction project is the cost of your subcontractors, the cost of your equipment, the cost of your materials, and the cost of your labor. And I think those are in order from left to right, from least risky to most risky. Your subcontractors, as a general contractor, you have very little risk in that. And as you move from left to right, your equipment is a little more risky, but it's really not that risky. Your material is what it is. Your cost, you need to manage the quantities that you're using, but the costs are the cost. There are some commodity increases that you might experience on a longer construction project. You know, the cost of concrete or asphalt, if it's a long project, might escalate rapidly, but there's ways to mitigate that at bid time by locking in your vendors at certain price points. In my opinion, the risk is really, it's the L, it's the labor. Next slide, please. You know, why is, in my opinion, is labor the most risky? And I think it comes down to that has the most involvement of people. You know, really, you know, that's when you're worried about productions, people, how hard they're going to work. Are they getting sick? You know, what attitude do they have when they come to work? You know, the others, the risk in equipment and material, in my opinion, is the people aspect of that. You know, if you're on a piece of equipment, you have an operator. The operator could give you attitude. The operator could be less productive. The Caterpillar 350 backhoe, it's not going to give you any less or more production on a given day. It's the person running it that it is. So really, you know, how do you manage that risk then in the labor? It comes down to understanding what your cost history is. You know, in my opinion, you should never bid a project that you don't have past experience in or don't have a really intimate knowledge of how you're going to do that, how long it's going to take you, what are your productions going to be. On the flip side, you know, we're in it to make money. You know, everybody's in business. That's what you want to do. You want to turn a profit, and I don't think it should be embarrassing to talk about that. You want to maximize your potential upside. You know, once you've covered your downside by knowing where your risks are, you know, how do I maximize that upside? And I think that comes down to a couple different components. Is understand where your competition is from a pricing standpoint, and one of the advantages to government contracting. I'm not so much familiar with the federal side, but state and local. All that information's public. You know, if you do an ODOT project and you're bidding something, there's extensive cost histories on ODOT's website, and I think all the other state government agencies are the same. I mean, you could see exactly where your competitors bid, so it's foolish not to do that research and to know where your competition is. Know your competition's workload. You know, have all of your competitors, do they have their backlog ready for the year in March and April? So when those bids come out in May, are they all fat already and they can't bid, so they're going to be going in with higher margins? And if you know that, you have an opportunity to raise your margins. And also know what your workload is. I mean, if you're one of those guys who got your backlog in March and you're ready to go, don't be bidding projects in May at very tight margins. You know, that's the time to fatten up and increase those margins when you go in at bid time. I kind of blew through that slide already. That's really all I had. Really simple presentation. I'm open to any questions if anybody has any questions.
You know, I was involved at Youngstown State construction bids. If we were doing a project for $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, you would see a lot of the local contractors, same group all the time. When we went over $2 million, you would see all these contractors coming in from Akron, Cleveland, you know, all over. When we did a new building, they came from different states. So, you know, every level of the bidding, and you see the same thing in the federal government. When you start looking at the high dollar amounts, those prime contractors come in and, you know, they sweep it in. They come in and they're ready for it. And again, that's where the small business that puts a team together that has 3 or 4 different experts, they have a chance, and they've had some success at that. At least I've seen some of that through some of my clients. So I just want to give that example to understand. I think what Travis had to say is very important. The risk involved, that's involved in all bidding. And then I think, you know, from both of these guys, and Ronda, if you knew her, you know, that their talent, their expertise, their experience of doing it really shows and comes into play. And so you really got to dive into it. And then after you do it a couple times, you'll find your way through it, I think. So I think I just want to leave you with that message. Any other questions? We wanted to wrap it down around 8 o'clock, and I think we're pretty close, 8:02. So. All right, thanks again. Thank you guys very much.